Welcome to Thoro-Graph's 2013 Oaks and Derby Seminar. I'm Jerry Brown. Those of you who are not that familiar with our data can go find out more about it by going to the introductory section of our website. But the basics, as always, are the lower the figure, the better the performance. Ground lost or saved on turns, as well as weight carried in previous races, is already factored into the figures for those races, with 5 pounds worth 1 point on the Thoro-Graph scale. Big figures are points, the superscript is for quarter points, so big 4 and little 3 means 4 3/4. Each column is a year, with the calendar starting at the bottom and going up as the year goes on. For last year's Breeders' Cup, the toughest drug testing regimen our sport has seen so far was instituted, and whether there was a cause and effect relationship or not, horses trained by some of the game's biggest names did not run well. A very similar program is in place this weekend in Kentucky, but only for the Oaks and Derby, which makes things tricky. We can't draw any conclusions based on how horses run in all other races over the weekend. Another thing to keep in mind is that Churchill Downs has a history of dead rails on big days. It has happened at least 3 times. It was that way opening night, it was not that way the next race day, and there is no way to know in advance whether that will be the case again this weekend. The only way to approach things is to carefully watch the races on the undercard both days. Both big races this weekend have very strong fields, but the Oaks in particular is something special. This is by far the best group for this race since we've been making figures, and realistically ever, since horses, like all athletes, are getting better. There is a decent run to the turn and less than a full field, but a lot of these have similar running styles, so those in outside posts will probably lose at least a couple of lengths in ground loss. But if the rail is bad, those stuck inside could be the ones in trouble. Beholder is by Henny Hughes, a sprinter himself whose runners are on average 3 points faster sprinting than going long, and the female family here is pretty sprinty too. The first time this filly got off synthetic and on dirt, she threw the best Thoro-Graph figure we have ever given to a 2-year-old filly in a sprint, and then was able to win the juvenile fillies despite bouncing considerably. This year she's won 2 out of 3 despite not coming close to her top, but that is not a good sign, especially the last one not being better. If she runs back to her best, Beholder has a big shot here, but her pattern is weak, and she may never be able to duplicate that effort at this distance. Close Hashes didn't start at 2, but has moved forward nicely since. This is a good filly with a nice pattern, and there's a good chance she can pair up her top. But she would need to do more than that to make an impact in this very tough field, and since she's unbeaten, will be a little overbet. Down the road with this one. Dreaming of Julia established a strong top as a 2-year-old, including one at a Breeders' Cup which had serious testing and without Lasix. In that race, she didn't run much worse than Beholder. She was wide while the winner saved ground. This year, she came out running at Gulfstream, where Pletcher always gets big figures, and in her last earned the best figure we have ever given out, not only to a filly or a 3-year-old, but any racehorse. This filly has a big pedigree, and is so much better than the others on her best that she can bounce quite a bit and still win. So the questions are, what effect did the huge effort have on her, and can Pletcher get a good effort out of her at Churchill? There is no way to answer the first one because there's no precedent, but she does have 5 weeks rest and a lot of room for error. At Gulfstream, it would be hard to believe this filly could lose, but at Churchill, it's a tricky call. She only has one isolated giant figure. Flashy Gray performed at a decent level last year and has moved forward nicely this year, earning strong figures in her last 2 despite losing both. This filly has never gone back, by which I mean bounced, and the last 2 came just 3 weeks apart. Now she gets 5 weeks, and with only moderate development to this point, is the most likely filly in the race to run a new top. Flashy Gray is slower than several going in, but the tougher the testing, the better it is for Mott and this filly, who has a chance to get into the exotics at a big price. Midnight Lucky is by Midnight Loot, who is off to about as good a start by a sire as any ever. In her debut, she ran a huge figure, and unlike with some others, wasn't ruined by it, running almost as well and stretched out. The good news for this filly is she's had 6 weeks rest and fits very well on number power. The bad news is the dam site here is very sprinty, with most not even trying a route, and the Dreaming of Julia is in the race. Still, she's a strong contender, and if the Pletcher horses aren't running, more than that. Princess of Silmar jumped to a new top last time and is more likely to bounce than pair up, which wouldn't be good enough anyway. Pure Fun did a lot of developing to get down to a couple of good ones late last year. Her last is better than it looked, but she's not fast enough here and doesn't figure to develop too much more short term. Rose to Gold was very strong as a 2-year-old, broke through 2 back, and was able to win the Fantasy despite bouncing. This is an interesting filly that is not overdeveloped and could run a new top soon, but she's a little too slow to use since she won't be a huge price. Shawnee Girl improved a lot when she got off Polly, but remains a few points short of competitive. Note she's much better than anyone else in her first dam. Still Seated jumped forward last time, but is way too slow and may not even like dirt. Unlimited Budget comes from a dam and has siblings that didn't race very often or go long. She herself definitely does go long, and when we factored in ground loss, she earned a big figure in the Fairgrounds Oaks. Like Dreaming of Julia, she's coming off a big top and is one of the fastest fillies in the race, but it's hard to make a case for her winning. She starts out much slower than Dreaming of Julia, and if the Pletcher horses are running their races, that one figures to win. If they are not, she won't either. In this tremendous edition of the Oaks, it's hard to see anyone other than Midnight Lucky or Dreaming of Julia winning. The ones that can be used in exotics underneath are Unlimited Budget, Roses to Gold, and Flashy Gray, who was hurt some by the draw.